Alright everyone, the Democrats have officially run out of ammo because now they're reverting to attacking Trump based on his taxes again. Where have I heard this before? I seem to believe that back in 2016 this was an election issue. Did it work well for the Democrats? No. Why the hell would they trot it back out unless they expected that everything else they're doing is failing? Support of BLM rioting has fallen to an all-time low. It's now in the upper 30s, which means that most independent voters in the country have turned their backs on the more racial justice bullshit. The economy is now growing again, unemployment largely reabsorbed in most states, other than deep blue states that persist in delusions and superstition. Everything's going well for Trump. Hell, the coronavirus epidemic, nobody's even really talking about that in U.S. politics at the moment. Have you noticed that? That in the last week they've stopped even talking about it? Could it be because it's conspicuous? People see, well, there's a lot of new cases, but the death toll keeps dropping. Why is this? Could it be flu season false positives? Probably. Could it be the fact that we were always overestimating the death toll because we weren't deploying enough tests? Yeah, those both play a significant role. Then you have like the Amy Coney Barrett SCOTUS thing. The Democrats refuse to even attack her on her own personal credibility. They're openly warning one another in full public view. Don't attack her religious beliefs, which admittedly she's highly religious. For any other nominee you would, I guess it's because she's female. So they've been completely defanged. They are literally just bitching about standards and decorum. That doesn't matter. Nobody cares. The public doesn't care about decorum. The party that wants to get what it wants to get doesn't give a shit about decorum. The ones that don't want something to happen, they bitch about it, but ultimately if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't care. Nobody gives a fucking goddamn shit. So when I see that the Democrats have pivoted back to talking about Trump's tax returns, totally flying the coop in the process, do they really have anything to discuss at all? Joe Biden has taken like 6 days off over the last 7 from even being out on the so-called campaign trail. And of course, in his case, that means talking to 20 people at the same time, and that's about it. Now, he's a no-show candidate with a party whose platform is basically orange man bad at this point. They've literally reverted to 2016. How did it work for you the last time? It didn't. That's the whole point. The New York Times claims to have obtained some of Trump's tax documents from over the last decade or so. Now, I would think that it probably violates multiple laws for them to be divulging this. Like they were pressed by one of Trump's representatives to show them what they actually had, and they wouldn't show it. They're like, well, we got to protect our source. Yeah, because your source would probably be facing a long term in prison otherwise. That could be a problem. A judge should get involved and force them, compel them to divulge that material. Or to retract and admit that it's not real. That's the easy way out, legally speaking. Of course, it's too close for the election for the Trump campaign to be able to litigate against them and force that to happen. That's the whole point. That's why they waited. They probably sat on the documents for months if they do have them. And if they don't have them, they're just making bullshit up. They're claiming, well, Trump is not as wealthy as you think. He's actually on hard times. His investments aren't panning out. He collapsed in the 90s, which, a lot of people back then did because of the post-boom time bubble that happened, but they only mention Donald Trump because he happens to have an R after his name. If he had a D after his name, then he'd be the ultimate business magnate from the 80s. Lots of champagne and celebration. They're claiming like he doesn't make any money and stuff. Let me tell you how wealth works. Because people seem to think, Bernie makes this mistake for his fans so that they'll gobble down his snake oil bullshit. Just because you're a billionaire does not mean you have $1 billion. It means you have $1 billion in assets. That's it. Once you've actually exchanged that money for property or something, you're paying on a return, but you're not paying on that same money year over year. You're not making $1 billion a year. If you have $1 billion, there ain't no way you're going to continue to be able to put that to work and make another billion out of it, unless you are really, really smart. You'll probably make tens of millions a year. That's called investing. Most of the time, billionaires, most of their wealth is held in factories, or in Trump's case, this is what he did, he was in real estate. His wealth is tied up in skyscrapers, offices that he rents out, he gets rent for them. Golf courses that people pay money to go golf at. And shit like a condominium developments and all the other things that he does. And then branding, like the Trump Steaks, which don't exist anymore, I think. Trump Vineyard, which still does. Trump everything. He slaps his name on something and it becomes more valuable because of his persona. Part of this was helped by things like The Apprentice. Part of this was helped by the fact that he embraced the MTV style culture, the shock jock thing, and he put his name out there and weighed in on everything that he could so that he was highly visible. And by being highly visible, he was able to market himself. Most of his wealth is tied up in property. Trump does not have $1 billion to his name lying around in a bank vault. That's not the way that real wealth actually works. That's the way that marginal wealth works. Marginal wealth is, hey, I won the lottery. I've got $100 million. Now take that $100 million and build things that will bring a return. Build rental properties. Buy land, build homes, and flip them at a profit or something. When you say, well, Trump doesn't pay that much in federal taxes, okay, let's look at a microcosmic example of what you're seeing. Let's say that I buy a property and build a home on it. I have a home built. And then I turn around and flip that property. On paper, it might look like I made a huge return. I can offset all of the things that I put into it against the taxes that I'll have to pay on the return. At the end of the day, no, I'm not going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars doing that probably. I might be lucky to make a few thousand. The nature of large-scale wealth like this is that you have a lot of such investments, each bringing a small marginal return. If you lose, you can write it off. Trump did this for years. Guess who developed the tax laws that he took advantage of in order to write off all of his business losses? Democrats and Republicans operating with the tax code for decades before he got into politics. That's why Trump is a billionaire. Yes, absolutely, he took write-offs on all of his bankruptcies and ended up paying a negative federal tax rate in some cases. By the way, are you going to look at his state taxes? Are you going to look at his personal versus business income? Are you looking at the self-employment penalty, as I like to call it? No, none of those matter, says the New York Times. Yeah, he paid many tens of millions of dollars a year during this period, but that's not the actual federal tax he paid. Bullshit, dude. Ken, look at the nature of finances. See, the problem is the average American doesn't have a huge amount of money, isn't flipping properties and building casinos and doing the investing thing. They're not hiring an army of accountants to look for every goddamn write-off they can get, to literally write off the pencil that was used to file the tax returns. They're not doing that. They don't have to. They're not going to have to pay a potential 45-50% goddamn tax rate, even if they're operating at a loss, if they don't play this game. This is a nothing burger. It's also probably in violation of federal law. For the New York Times to come out and say, hey, we've got his tax returns. Hey, look, we were right. He's actually not that rich. Dude, he's got billions of dollars in properties. The fact that they can operate near a loss at times is largely indicative of the world economic situation. It's not indicative of Trump being personally bad at managing businesses. Look at the tax returns of a bunch of other billionaires, and you'll find very similar things. They know how to handle money, and they know how to account for it so that they operate at efficiency, so that they don't have to take a real loss, but on paper they don't have to pay a bunch of money. By the way, these properties are hosting and creating literally hundreds of thousands of businesses, of jobs across the entire world. Trump is actually an integral part of the world economy because of the vastness of his holdings. So are many other billionaires, and then you have some that they just squirrel their money away into investments that don't really pan out for anybody other than themselves. Michael Bloomberg, and then they throw away all of their wealth to political ventures. And the idea that Trump is broke is offset by the fact that at any given time he could sell any of those holdings to another company or another individual and pocket tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. How much do you think a skyscraper is worth? How much money do you think goes into building a 30-40 story building that's hosting thousands of different small businesses and offices and shit? Do you realize how much money is tied up in those? Have you looked at the budgeting for even smaller infrastructure lately? Do you know how much it takes to maintain a golf course? And by the way, if there's a downturn, part of it is due to the fact that Trump entered politics technically unwisely as far as his business goes, and then his brand becomes hyper-politicized. So people before that were like Democrats or something, they would have gone and bought the Trump wine or gone and stayed at Trump Tower or something. They don't do that anymore. And then other people who are Republicans, maybe they double down. They say, well, I was going to eat one Trump steak. Why? What's two Trump steaks? It won't give me a coronary. Oh, wait, they went out of business? Okay, I guess I'm getting sloshed instead. Going playing golf with Dick Cheney. Bad time, by the way. You might get shot in the ass with birdshot. Now, the Democrats are whining about his taxes again. What bigger admission is there that the Democrats don't have a platform? Can you name any of Biden's proposals? No, Green New Deal, well, that wasn't originally his proposal. That's just something he grifted off of to get the AOC crowd to shut up and vote for him. He doesn't have any. Oh, I want to legalize marijuana. Okay, yeah. And now that you jailed hundreds of thousands of young black men under your Tough on Crime 1994 bill, now you want to let them out of prison and expunge their records. Sorry I ruined your life throughout the 90s and 2000s. I'm sorry. I'll give you reparations, maybe. Al Sharpton says it's a good idea for voters' intent. It's just basically the Democrats are running on a platform of I'll give you some free welfare breadcrumbs, vote for me and I'll give you some free shit. And by the way, that other dude is probably Hitler and probably a rapist and broke. He's not actually successful. Now he just owns, what is it, a dozen skyscrapers, a dozen or so golf courses, one of the largest brands in the entire world, thousands of condominiums and shit. No, he's not successful at all. He has no wealth. Wealth isn't just US dollars. In fact, if anything, holding a pile of fiat currency, you have a declining value. You should look at things that tend to increase in value over time. This is what a smart investor would do, and a property certainly properly maintained, properly branded, bringing a decent return can be one. But people who aren't wealthy generally aren't going to know that. Especially if they're Democrats, they've been taught to hate that kind of person. They don't realize that Trump is literally causing tens of thousands of US citizens to be employed just by owning those properties. Of course, they would consider him landlord class. He's a parasite and stuff. Oh, no, not really. Supposedly, he operates at a continuous loss, so I guess he's not bilking that many people. His rental rates must be pretty affordable if he's supposedly losing money hand over fist, according to the New York Times. If he's losing so much money, how is it that he keeps being able to reinvest? Is it because people invested in him because the Trump brand has been worth a lot of money and generally brings a return? And if it's bringing a return, how is he losing money? See, the New York Times is caught in a catch-22 fucking paradoxical situation where they're trying to explain how he's a greedy, parasitical, dust louse landlord sleazeball on one hand, and on the other hand, loses constantly, doesn't know what he's doing. Look, the proof is in the pudding. The Trump economy was damn strong and doing just fine until the corona bullshit. Biden, by the way, wants to extend a 3-month nationwide lockdown causing a depression. Trump is piling us out of the recession as we speak. We might not even be in a recession come election day. I think that's just great. The proof is in the pudding. The man has surrounded himself by people competent to run an economy. Has Joe Biden? Why do you think that they're busy bitching about his tax returns from 2000 or something? It's completely fucking goddamn ridiculous. That's about all. Peace out.